Hello and welcome to our live coverage of the Phoenix 200, one of American motor racing's traditional events, and the final curtain raiser to the Indy 500 in May. That race also live on Sky. In Arizona, the race is only a few minutes away and we'll cross to there very soon. But first, I should introduce my two guests tonight. First, we have motor racing journalist and former Williams team manager Peter Windsor, who last year attended most of the Indy Racing League events. And with him, one of our regular pundits, Chris Goodwin, last year a front runner in the FIA GT Championship with the Parabolica Motorsport McLaren F1. Well, Peter, welcome. The Indy Racing League is the breakaway group from Card, and people said it would never work, that it would never pick up momentum. Today there's a full grid. Last year's engine reliability seems to have been sorted out. Do you feel the series is going places? Oh, I do, yes. And of course, don't forget it was Cart that broke away from the Indy Racing League. That's what they want us to believe, and to some extent they're right, because American motorsport, he owns the Indianapolis 500, and it's around that race that this championship has now evolved with its own cars and its own engines. And what we see today is a fantastic grid. It's incredibly close. It's the closest grid we've had at Phoenix for 33 years. Chris, crashes. We had 9 of them in Florida in the first round of this championship. They seem to be part and parcel of the game here. Nigel Mansell, I think, here knocked a hole in the wall at one stage a few years ago.
Yeah, well, the problem in this kind of motorsport is that what would normally be a harmless spin in Formula One is a heavy accident. As you can see here, you know, if you have a spin, you're going to hit the wall and hit it hard. So you don't tend to get away with a great deal. The races are very long as well, and with pit stops and changing fuel loads, it's difficult to actually predict what the car is going to handle. Like different temperatures can affect the handling of a car. But also another thing is with the high speed you achieve on these ovals, if you're in or out of traffic, if you're behind a car or overtaking a car, it can really affect the way a car behaves, and again that can catch you out and again put you into the wall.
Yes, what about track conditions and air temperature and airflow?
Well, they're important in motorsport in general, but they're very, very important in oval racing, because you're talking about just 3 corners that you're trying to get perfect, and so obviously small variations have a huge effect if you're that near perfection, and that's what oval racing is all about, trying to anticipate the changes and adapt the car and your driving to those changes.
Oval racing, as you say, but this is a tri-oval, so what's that?
Well, it just means that there's not a back straight parallel to the front straight. There's a sort of kink, and they straight line the kink, and it's still flat, but it just makes it slightly more interesting around the back of the circuit, approaching the last corner. So they have to be perfectly on line there, and that accident we saw was Kenny Brack last year, slightly offline, coming out of that kink on the back straight.
They call it a dog leg. I think it's not really a dog leg, though, is it, in the golfing sense of the word?
No, it's more a kink, really. It's just a sort of slight bend.
Well, let's take a look at the car we have in the studio. It is a model. Some big names have won this race in the past, and that, of course, there's a British interest in that, isn't there, Peter?
Well, there is indeed. That's built by G-Force. They won the Indianapolis 500 last year, their first full racing car they ever built. A fantastic achievement, based down in Fontwell in the south of England. And they, of course, also built the car that broke the sound barrier. So as a result of that, G-Force are really riding high at the moment, and all credit to them. And their cars are very quick here in Phoenix this weekend.
How competitive do you feel the racing is going to be, Chris, here?
Well, looking at the grid, the qualifying times are incredibly tight, but qualifying is one thing, a 200-mile race is another. These races are very, very difficult to read, though. In particular, I think this race is going to be very hard to predict a winner. It's a long race, so a lot of the outcome is going to be down to pit strategy, teamwork, reliability. Last year, reliability was a major influence, so I wouldn't know who on earth to pick as a winner, but it's going to be a tight race and good fun to watch.
Names have won this race in the past. Let's take a look at them in the field today. Only one past victor, Dutchman Arie Luijendijk. Arie, of course, a winner of last year's Indy 500, and we have a superb model of that car, as we've talked about. And as you can see, Eddie Cheever 1996, Bobby Gordon in 1995, and some big names there, Peter.
Yes, there are, and I think there are even bigger names coming in the future from IRL. There's some very quick guys here. Tony Stewart is a world-class driver in any dimension, and he's a fantastic guy to watch. I'm really looking forward to seeing him perform. And he's not on the front row, which is going to make it even more interesting. We have Jeff Ward and Billy Boat on the front row. Billy Boat's got a bit of an odd name, I confess, but equally the guy's very quick. He's really earned his spurs in sprint car racing, and he's gone very quickly in IRL from day one. And it's interesting to see Raul Boesel, who's a classic kart driver now in IRL, and he's in the midfield. That's not to decry Raul, but it's to show that the standard of driving in IRL is now very, very high.
It looks like the conditions out there will be reasonably warm today, that the forecast is for a high of 88 degrees. How will that affect the racing?
Well, obviously good in that it's not going to rain, but I think the temperatures are going to be slightly higher than in qualifying, so the teams and drivers are going to have to take that into consideration. It's going to be hot out there. I think these drivers are used to racing in hot conditions, but it's going to be hard work for these guys, and they're going to have to keep their concentration for a long time in hot conditions.
Those are live pictures coming in now from Arizona, Peter. You've touched on some of those names. I think we're going to become pretty familiar with those guys before the night's out.
That's right. We see Kenny Brack there. He's a name well known to European race fans. Did very well in European 3000. He's driving for AJ Foyt now in IRL. He was right on the pace in the first race in Disney World, and he's very quick here too. Qualified when it was a little bit too hot, so he should be pretty happy with that. Roberto Guerrero, another name from the European scene. Marco Greco too's raced in Europe, so there's a lot of European contingent there. Also the Marco team, Helmut Marko, did European 3000 last year, is now having his first race in IRL with Dave Steele, a very good young American driver, rookie driver, having his first race here at Phoenix. They did well to qualify, and a lot can be expected from Helmut.
It's a lot for a European audience to focus on in Phoenix this afternoon.
That's right. I think it's interesting that a guy like Helmut Marko, who achieved a lot of success in European 3000 with his team, with Montoya driving for him, is now doing IRL, and I think that says a lot about this championship. There's very good prize money, it's competitive, it's not difficult to get the car competitive. You buy a G-Force, you get an Aurora engine, you choose whether you want to be on Goodyear's or Firestone, and if you've got a quick driver, you're up there running at the front.
Just looking along the grid there, the 28 starting cars, but no Jim Guthrie, who won the race last year.
Yeah, it's sad that. Jim's a great guy, good driver, did very well to win this race last year. And his teammate, Jeff Ward, is on the pole. That's the irony of it all. And Jim was very quick in practice and qualifying, and then had an engine failure just at the wrong moment as he had to go out and set a time for the grid. So very sad not to see him in the race, but again indicative of how competitive IRL is now. There are 4 quite good drivers not in this race because they had problems in practice.
The cars, Chris, warming up there. What are they trying to do at this stage?
Well, what they're trying to do is get some heat into their tyres primarily. They have a rolling start, and they're going to hit the first corner at very high speed, so they want everything up to temperature, so they've got a fair bit of grip to see them around that first bend. But also they'll be having a really good look at the circuit conditions. You can see different colours on the tarmac there, different skid marks obviously, but you know, various points on the circuit where there might be a bit of dirt or you know, a bit of fluid even possibly from one of the cars, so that all the drivers will be trying to get a good read on the circuit conditions before they take the start.
Okay, 200 miles of close racing sure to follow. Let's cross to Arizona and join our American commentary team led by Paul Page.
And you really have to wonder, the former motocross champion that is accustomed to jumping out of a gate, or the former midget driver who's accustomed to a nice flying start. Green. Ward makes a good move early. One engine looked like it was in trouble as they went through one. He's still running. Ward to the lead. Boat to second. Stewart to third. Looks like Kenny Brack was able to make a good move and jump in fourth. Oh, look at him spread wide there.
Good side-by-side racing coming off of 4 here, Paul.
Back in the field, plenty of action. Salazar, remember that he had that problem with the car yesterday. Caught the wall good in 2, but apparently they've got it back working. Now on board with Scott Goodyear. That's Roberto Guerrero just ahead of Goodyear, and then Eddie Cheever. Whoa, Chastain comes very high, up close to the wall. Stefan Gregoire driving the Chastain blue car. Back to the front of the field, Ward still out in front. Tabasco car hot today. Boat, then Stewart, then Kenny Brack, then Jimmy Kite. Salazar is now in 5th, followed by Hamilton, Sharp, J.J. Yaley, and Buddy Lazier.
It took 2 or 3 laps, Paul, for these guys to all get sorted out and start feeling what the car is going to give them for this first segment, but a lot of good side-by-side racing early.
Rest of the field comes through. They're all chasing Jeff Ward, who has led in 3 of his 5 IRL starts. Top of the screen will give you the lap number and the distance behind the leader as we go through the field.
This is on board with Scott Sharp here. You can see him shuffle his hands around a little bit. A lot of guys don't do that, Paul. A lot of guys never take their wheel off their hand off the wheel, but a lot of times Scott will actually shuffle his hands, and a little unusual.
Looking back from Hamilton for a second there in front of Scott. Hamilton in 7th, Sharp in 8th. Back on board Sharp. No change, front of the order. Ward, Boat, Stewart. And the other thing to consider is very quickly the front of the field will begin to overhaul the back end of the field as they spread out.
Well, not as quickly today as we've seen in the past here at PIR.
Tony Stewart now begins to move on Billy Boat. They go too wide down the backstretch. Boat in very tight, but Stewart pushes into second place. So Stewart's laid down the gauntlet. We'll take a look as they come to the line at who's running the faster laps. You'll see the order and then the lap interval. Ward actually not as quick as Stewart on that last lap.
No, Stewart's flying, and it's really a good sign. If you can get on the throttle coming off of turn 2 to get underneath the guy, that's a good sign for Tony and how he's going to do in this segment. The other guys are all striving for that same situation.
It's often that we see Stewart with faster laps than everybody else in the field. But again, fast is not nearly as important as traffic.
Well, Paul, we've seen Stewart fast in the past, but these teams have closed the gap on the Menards team. They've had the equipment now for a little bit longer, almost a year now, and a lot of these guys have really closed this gap.
Running in 3rd place, Breck. Look, they're coming up on the back cars already. That's Tice Carlson that the leader went past car into the wall.
Down in the middle of turn 3 and 4, right before the Goodyear Bridge.
Buddy Lazier, 96 Indy champion. The 91 Delta plate looks okay. Snapped his visor up.
Yeah, the visor
doesn't look like much of a hit.
Well, it's hard to say. It's too bad, Buddy. They tried some different things after qualifying. Weren't happy with the changes they made. They tried to put more wing, more downforce in that car in the last practice session. They saw that that didn't work for them, so they changed it back to a setting, obviously, that didn't agree with that race car.
And with Buddy, anytime he gets the wall, there's always concern for his back. Remember, it was at this very racetrack in 1996 that he literally shattered his back in a practice crash over in turn 2. But then, with total perseverance, went on to win the Indianapolis 500 2 months later.
Well, God, that was real tight for somebody to get just by him without getting involved in that accident. That was Cheever that just about got involved in that situation. You can see the car didn't hit the wall very hard, and but the good news about these cars, they made some big safety changes on these cars to try to eliminate some of the problems they had last year. And most everybody's real happy with the changes, the modifications they made to the cars, the bell housings, and what they've done around the seat area and the head area to try to protect these drivers.
Hey, Tom, we just checked with Ron Hemmelgarn on the condition of Buddy Lazier. He said he's fine. Asked him what happened. He said the motor let go.
Oh, I hope that's not a prediction of other things to come. Lazier was running in 10th when it happened. Right behind him was Eddie Cheever. You saw a glimpse of Cheever in that number 51 car. There he is again. And Eddie just barely missed him as he came through the corner passing him.
Well, he did just barely miss him, but Eddie came from way back. He started 20th, and he's already up to 10th, 11th, that area. So obviously Eddie is real happy with what he's feeling inside that cockpit right now.
And his counterpoint, Buddy Lazier, who looked like he was moving very well until the engine finally let go. We have our first caution, and the field now circulates slowly behind the pace car, but still headed up by Jeff Ward, our pole sitter. Jack?
Well, Paul, you were talking about Billy Boat dropping back and losing a couple of positions. You guys know that on these cars you have a 5th in a 6th gear. You know, you've got kind of an overdrive gear to them. Well, what happened is Billy Boat tried that overdrive gear, and the car began to slow down considerably. And Tom Sneva, he couldn't drive it as well into the corners. So what they've done during this caution period is they've been back and forth on the radio trying to make an adjustment with what they call the bars. And you could maybe explain what that is, so that they can go back into that overdrive gear and get the car to handle as well as it is in the regular gear.
Gary Gerald?
A problem for Robbie Buell, and you talk about fortuitous timing for John Menard, who watches from pit road. Some of the upper cowling bodywork right in front of the windscreen, in front of the cockpit, came loose. Then came the yellow, so he was able to duck into the pits. They got it buttoned down. Had they not been able to get in and that bodywork rip away, they'd have lost all their radio communication, and who knows what other problems might have resulted.
So Robbie Buell, the winner at Loudon a year ago, at least has an opportunity to get it fixed.
And Paul, going back to what Jack talked about with the different high gears they have, the 5th and 6th gears, usually those gears are close enough on the spread that it really doesn't affect the handling characteristics. So I'm a little bit surprised on that. But, you know, with this yellow, it'll give them a chance to regroup a little bit, talk on the radio. Sometimes talking under the green is a tough situation for these guys with the traffic and the shortness of these straightaways. But this is a good opportunity for them to get regrouped.
Now, another car that we kept track of during that incident was actually running behind Cheever, that 21 car of Roberto Guerrero driving for Pagan Racing. And as he got into the situation, he lost it, went up. Well, it's still unclear, was it a full brush of the wall or did he just get very close? I don't see anything obvious, do you, Tom?
Well, we can't see the right side of the wall, and that's what's going to be touching something. So maybe we'll get a chance to see if he was able to white wall those Goodyears a little bit. It does look like...
Looks like at least the right rear.
Well, that's a big enough brush from a driver's standpoint. Yeah. No question about it. He's got some white on those things. There's an easier way to do that, Roberto. They make paint for that, where you can do it in slow motion.
Now, logically, Roberto ought to come in and take a look at that.
Paul, race drivers a lot of times aren't very logical. So right now what he's trying to do is feel the car out. What he wants to make sure is that he hasn't cracked a wheel and maybe has a slow leak in one of those tires. And that's what the driver's trying to get through his mind, feel secure in. And with track position being real important here, you know, he's going to either gamble a little bit or he's real confident that everything's all right.
You want to talk about track position, guys? That's exactly what happened with Brian Stewart. What he did with the Konica team is said, we haven't been lapped. What we should do is go in, top off the fuel tank, and then we'll be out of sequence when all the leaders pit. What will happen at the end of all those pit stops? Well, they think that they'll be in the lead. Gary?
As for the leaders, Jeff Ward, we just checked with Mitch Davis, the team manager on the wall. He said this car is awesome. Now, it's not often early in a race you'll hear somebody talk in such glowing terms. Meanwhile, for the man right behind him, Tony Stewart, Larry Curry reports that they've got a little more push than they would like, but they want to wait until the fuel load burns off a bit, then see how the car responds, then make the decision whether or not they'll have to change any of the handling characteristics.
Now Brian Howard has the flags in hand. See the green come up there furled? That says one more lap to go. We'll see the running order as we come back toward the green flag. And Marco Greco, they are saying, should come in. The observers have reported that he's spraying something. Not sure what, but they do want to check that car.
And he is on the way in. He's in the pit lane now.
In that first little segment, Eddie Cheever ran from 20th up to 11th. And Stefan Gregoire from 22nd to 14th. So some good runs coming up from the back of the field. There's Greco answering the black flag, and we'll see how serious an answer it's going to be. The crew obviously is taking it fairly seriously as they're going for the calling.
It looks like it's probably some kind of motor problem that where it's got some holes in it that it didn't have in it when the green flag went out.
As they come back to the green flag, it will be Jeff Ward and Tony Stewart. You'll see another yellow car third in the line. That's Tyus Carlson. He's a lap down. And then the true third place car, Billy Boat, who's in that green car now, moving to the inside as we take green once again. Kenny Breck took a look to the inside. Davey Hamilton comes alongside of Jimmy Kite.
Great move by Davey to get underneath Jimmy Kite right there on that restart.
Now you're on board with Davey Hamilton. Hamilton looking for the inside. Now right behind him with Scott Sharp, that's Tice Carlson off to the outside as Sharp is chasing Hamilton into one.
They've obviously missed the setup with Tice Carlson. He's getting passed by all these guys. That's real tough. You know, he's got to look out, try to save his life on the outside.
Yellow again, John Paul Jr. catches the wall, rolls to a stop. He's just off of turn 2, right at the crossover point on the dog leg on the back of this. While they call it an oval, it's almost a D-shaped track. Obviously not a physical problem for John Paul Jr., but one that they're going to have to worry about the race car itself. They may be able to, certainly the way they're acting is that they can tow it and maybe get it fired up and go again.
Yeah, I'm not sure that he did make contact with that wall, Paul, because it's got all 4 wheels on it, and that's a good sign.
Well, and the official report now coming from race control is no, he did not get any contact with that wall. So this is our second yellow of the day. And on that restart, Kenny Brack made a very, very good move and sits in 4th behind Billy Boat. Of course, Jeff Ward is still the leader. So the second yellow they will try to get. John Paul Jr. restart. They already done that. There he goes. Got the engine going, and he'll limp back. So still with the tow bar at the top of the car. The Indy Racing League, Dura Lube 200, 19 laps complete. Jeff Ward, the pole sitter, is the leader. Tony Stewart has moved from 3rd place up into 2nd. The original front row starter on the outside, Billy Boat, sits in 3rd. It's our second yellow of the day. John Paul Jr. spun it quickly to make this yellow. The first yellow involved Buddy Lazier, who actually caught the wall coming off of turn 3 and is out of the race at this point. We're ready to go back to green flag racing as the pace car brings the field around, and we show you all 28 of the starters here today. Only one other time in the history of this track have there been 28 starters. And the first 24 in the field are all within the same second after qualifying.
Well, I think that's the key to the number of cars in this race, Paul, is how close they are. These guys, these teams have all just learned a tremendous amount in the last year and have really closed the gap on each other. Nobody's got a big advantage now, and really that's what it's all about. That's what makes racing fun.
Tice Carlson driving for Jimmy Emke in and out of the pits. Of course, they've been struggling, obviously, with that car. He's been the slowest car in the field since they've dropped the green flag, and they want to find out why and get him going again.
Well, and I was mentioning the part that when the car's off that much and you're in traffic, you're trying to save your lap or your life every corner, and then by looking ahead, but also you got to be worried about traffic coming up from behind. So that's probably the worst feeling in racing, is when you have to look both directions at once and hold your breath at the same time.
Well, with the spin, John Paul Jr., who drove around the track with the lift bar still attached to his car, John Paul lost 1 lap, so he's down a lap behind the leader of the race. Jeff Ward, the Tabasco car. Green on the lower side and wings is chased now. Boy, take a look at Kenny Brack as he comes alongside Boat. Almost a little too close. Boat gets around him.
Wow, they had wheels locked up there. That could have been a lot of trouble for both those guys. Kenny Brack realized it and tried to get back out of there as best he could.
Yeah, and it's tough to do. That'll send you airborne as quick as can be. Still, Tony Stewart cannot outrun Jeff Ward. What a great job the young man is doing at the front of the field. Great motocross champion. Trying now to make his way with 4 wheels under him.
Well, he might be twice as fast with twice as many wheels on that thing, Paul.
They all circle around. It catches up your breath when you see him come around a car heading into the pits like we just did. Still Ward. Stewart 3/10 back. Then Vogt, Breck, Salazar.
And that was actually Brian Tyler, who we saw down low heading for the pit. Some kind of problem there.
Eddie Cheever on the move, now up to 6th place after starting 20th. The first race here, Johnny Rutherford won $65.15. Today's winner will receive an excess of $125,000. Back at Phoenix International with the Pep Boys Indy Racing League, Mark Dismore just lost it off at 2, down onto the grass, and there's actually been quite a bit of change here. We'll make sure he is all right, and we can show you exactly what happened to Mark Dismore.
Well, you can see he was underneath there, and the car just jumped sideways. There was a car on the outside of him there that might have taken a little air off of that off the wing of this Dismore car, caused the car to get sideways.
And also while we were away, Tony Stewart took over the lead of the race from Jeff Ward. How did that happen? Well, a very strong charge from Tony Stewart.
Tony gets a good run off of turn 2 and beats him into turn 3. But that was all set up by the run he got off of turn 2. He was able to get into that throttle so much quicker.
And almost immediately, Billy Boat and Kenny Breck also got past and put Ward back into 4th place. Earlier, Buddy Lazier into the fence. They've now had time to check him over. Jack Arute, how is he?
Well, Paul, he's perfectly okay, and we documented, Buddy, that it was an engine problem. But take us through those moments going into turn 3 with you at the wheel.
Well, it just it's the worst thing a driver could ever ask for. You have no control. You're just going for a ride. Entering the engine, entering turn 3, the engine, tightened up a little bit and then popped, let go, and I clutched it. But you need that momentum to keep you in the corner, and I spun in my own oil and made contact. It's very disappointing, but we'll be back.
Now, we've documented the problems with your back. You won the Indianapolis 500 literally with a broken back. You say that you're better, but how can a driver, how can any athlete with that kind of life-threatening injury that you had, how can you continue?
Well, I think it's you got to love what you're doing, and I think everybody out here is professional first and wants to make the money and win, but deep down inside they love what they're doing, and that's the way it is for me.
Paul, Indy's next.
And very important, of course, to Buddy Lazier is all. Jimmy Kite, he fell from 5th to 10th on the last restart. Not sure why.
Well, it wasn't just a restart, Paul. They just missed the handling somewhere along the line. It's been a slow progression back. He might have got a couple cars might have got him on the restart, but he's been slowly moving the wrong direction.
In front of him, that white car is Raul Boisel, the 30 car. He currently was in 12th as he headed into the pits.
Well, I wanted to update you on Marco Greco's situation. He is retired back to the garage area. The engine has expired on Marco's car as well. We'll get a word with him because they're going to do some additional work.
So 2 out of the race, Lazier and Marco Greco. Greg Ray from Plano, Texas, uses the opportunity on the 35th lap and decides to come in, top the car, do what checking they can. They're working on the rear wing, specifically on the wicker bill of that rear wing. And we should come back to the green flag at the conclusion of the next lap. Jack Arute?
Well, Marco Greco, you say you've got a severe oil leak. The engine didn't blow, but it's blowing a lot of oil. You want to try and get back out.
Yeah, it's a pump. I think there's some problem with the pump oil, and we try to see if we can fix it and try to make some points. It's very important for us. We came from long ways and try to make the team rise, and I hope we can do something. If not, we look for Indianapolis.
Well, Paul, ready or not, we're going green.
Well, Jack Arute, as the pace car takes him down into 1. One of the great things about the IRL, Jack Arute, if you're still with me, is that they let him work the car behind the wall, right?
You know, Paul, that was one of the great additions that they made because it's a lot like NASCAR and Winston Cup. And what they've also done, because of the point situation, that allows a team to go back out. Now, that's a plus for people that are chasing points, but consider this as well. It's a big plus for each and every team as they try and build their black book, Tom Sneva. And that's like, how does the car perform? How does it work in traffic? They can add this. If Greco can go back out, they can gain some points. And as you know, they can put that in their log, and when they come back here, it helps with the setup.
Well, Jack, more importantly, Indianapolis is coming up. Marco's with the new team, his own deal. They're trying to get some experience, some pressure under fire, you might say. He needs to get that crew ready to make pit stops at Indy.
Back to the green flag. It's Stewart. Then 2 lap cars on the inside. That's Billy Boat. He comes flying down the inside. Mike Groff ahead of him. And now Billy Boat in second place chases the leader at the same time. You get a glimpse. There he is, high and outside. Is Jeff Ward also trying to handle that lap traffic. Now Boat in pursuit, but Stewart steadily pulling away.
Well, Kenny Breck's making a move. Billy Boat's teammate has done a nice job on that restart, and he's closed the gap on his teammate Billy.
You know, most owners would go nuts when you have two cars out of your team fighting one another. AJ's just the opposite. He loves it.
Well, you're assuming that he wasn't nuts before this all started, but being around it racing this long.
I'm not going to get in the same problem that Jack Arut's already in. Jack?
Well, Paul, Kenny Breck has been complaining from a push condition where the nose wants to continue to the wall throughout the race. What A.J. Foyt's done is he's done a situation where he says, we'll run Breck in a fuel conservation mode. We'll open it up and let our other car, Billy Boat, run wide open. It'll be interesting to see what that does in terms of pit stops.
So the top four, Stewart, Boat, Breck, and Ward, have all cleared. Look who's moved up. We've mentioned Cheever several times, now in 5th place. Greg Watt, 22nd to 8th, and Schmidt also coming up. You know, Sam Schmidt just had eye surgery, and it brought his eyes to 2010. Maybe that explains the move.
Usually, the worse you see, the faster you go, Paul, so I don't understand this one.
Paul, you're talking about Eddie Cheever. You know, one of the great things that Eddie's done here this weekend is the fact that he's running unsponsored. He has a very close friend in the Colorado area that's developed a farm for terminally ill children to go out and enjoy themselves. So what did Eddie do to his friend? He said, hey, bring some decals to Phoenix. You're sponsoring my car.
Sharp picks up 6th place as he goes around the 15 car of Salazar.
And Salazar's a pretty good story, too, but this is looking out of the back of Scott Sharp's car right there.
Scott Sharp, who had the fastest practice time in the test earlier in the month, he wasn't able to match those times in qualifying.
Again, out of the back of Sharp's car. You can see back there a pretty good story. Salazar, he crashed that car in the last practice session. They had to change a lot of things in that car, but yet it's still right in the hunt.
There's Sharp, take a look back. Running through the field, Davey Hamilton makes a move on Robbie Buell.
And actually,
Buell
has done a nice job coming back up through the pack, so Davey's got his act together right now. This is on board with Davey.
45 laps complete.
You can see that 33.8. That's a fuel mileage situation. When they see that on their dash, they need to be thinking about getting towards that pit. Trouble, right.
Big trouble. Big trouble as J.J. Yaley loses that slow loss right in front of Davey Hamilton, and Davey became the victim.
Well, you could see how it startled Davey. From the in-car camera, you could see him flinch. He had nowhere to go. JJ just jumped sideways, caught the ball, and Davey was just not at the right place at the right time.
Yellow comes out on the 46th lap. And my presumption would be that we're probably getting to a point where you're going to see all of the leaders head into the pit.
Davey's out of the car here, but he's pointing to the fireman to try to get him to address the problem.
Yeah, will you please put that out? That's I don't want to take this back all burned.
It's a lot easier to see when that right rear is gone, but that's not what he wanted to see happen.
Davey's okay. Safety team there. A little bit slower for J.J. Yaley to get out of the car. Time to time, we try to monitor the two-way radios.
Car 44, car 6 at turn 2. Car 44, car 6 at turn 2.
That's the Indy Racing League Race Control Channel.
And
there's a view of race control.
Pits are open.
The fellow with the hat on, that's Brian Barnhart. He is the race director for the IRL. And just down to his left, almost off your screen, is the fellow who's talking on the radio, Mel Harder. And you can see Leo Mel up behind him to the left. He is, of course, is in charge of the Indy Racing League on a day-to-day basis. That's the race control operation. And now we wait, and we didn't have to wait very long. Here comes the race leader, Tony Stewart, on the pit road. Can take some leisure on this stop.
Actually, all the leaders are coming in. Everybody followed Stewart into the pit lane.
Paul, we're with Tony Stewart as Larry Curry's team, or John Menard, jumps into action. His teammate, who is just beyond him by 2 pits, caught part of that last debris and had damage to the left front. That's Robbie Buell. You see a major wing change with Tony Stewart. They're trying to get rid of that push. Jackaroo.
Well, Gary Gerald, here's what's happened at A.J. Boyd's pit. A.J. wanted Billy Boat to follow Tony Stewart onto pit road, and Billy Boat overruled A.J. Boyd. He said, I really think we can have another caution, A.J., before we'll have a fuel problem. So let's conserve the fuel, and then let's just stay out and lead this thing for a while. That's the call they've made, Paul.
So already early on, in fact, the tactics begin to play. Billy Boat, car 11, the Conseco car.
Yeah, I haven't seen too many drivers try to overrule A.J. Foyt, especially when A.J. is paying the checks, but we'll see how this one is out.
I don't think it matters whether he's paying the checks or not. I don't see anybody in the pits going to overrule that man, A.J. Foyt. So under the yellow with the Hamilton and Yaley incident off of turn 2. Field circulates. 49 laps complete. At Phoenix, nearly a quarter of the race complete. We are under yellow. The reason for it was an incident over in turn 2. That's Davey Hamilton's car. He's actually the victim in this thing. He was following J.J. Yaley in the number 44, that green car, and just suddenly a lazy spin.
It was lazy, but it wasn't lazy in Davey's mind. He just had nowhere to go. He's already committed high.
This is the way it looked from on board. They head into 1. Davey Hamilton chasing Yaley.
Well, Yaley, you can see the car moving around just a little bit right there, and all of a sudden the car just jumped sideways. That had to surprise JJ. Poor Davey was looking for a place to go, and it wasn't there.
And you know, if he'd gotten another few feet down the track, the wall disappears, and he would have been clear. So we're under yellow in the Dura Lube 200. We'll return with more of this race after a message and a word from our ABC stations. Back at Phoenix under yellow. Let's take a look at what's happened thus far on the 10th lap. Buddy Lazier caught the wall, and he was fortunately not injured, but when his engine let go, was out of the race. Then the lead change. Jeff Ward on the left, Tony Stewart on the right as Stewart powers under him. Ward fell further back when he was attacked by Billy Boat as well. Then on the 32nd lap, Mark Dismore tapped to the wall, in across the grass. They're going to put him back in the car. He's going to get back into the fight. And then on the 46th lap, Davey Hamilton was following J.J. Yaley. Yaley spun. Hamilton caught the wall. Different look at the same thing, Tom.
Well, this is from Goodyear's point of view. Yaley gets sideways. Davey has no place to go. Now we got debris. Watch this thing. The tire coming across with a half shaft in it. I'll guarantee you the driver's eyes are closed right there.
Boy, that is a terrifying moment for Scott Goodyear. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
And one of the victims of that incident, a flying wheel, caught the left front suspension for Robbie Buell. Significant damage. It got into the side pod, the side plate on the front wing, and all the suspension. They're trying to replace it, but he's been here a long time. Jack?
Well, Gary, Jimmy Kite is having problems, not with his engine, with his brakes. They've lost him. They brought him back in, and now what they're doing is filling brake fluid on board, bleeding the brakes, and they're going to send him back out. A 1 mile oval, guys, you need brakes.
Well, not only brakes, but the traffic that these guys are experiencing, you got to have brakes, and you can't be competitive without them.
There's the official order after 54 laps. But as they come back to the green flag, it will be Billy Boat out in front, and then another car, and then Eddie Cheever. Now, neither one of those two cars have made pit stops. They're expected really in another 19, 20 laps that they will do that. Then 2 other cars, Mike Groff, Paul Durant, and finally third place, Raul Boisel. That's how they come to the green. Billy Boat, that dark green car.
Well, they're actually behind Tice Carlson there, who was at the end of that lap, so it's going to be tough to get by traffic at that situation. Eddie Cheever.
Boat still trying to clear traffic as Cheever comes to the inside. Oh, what a nice move for Eddie. Sorting the traffic, just like you said, and Cheever takes the lead.
4 or 5 wide back there coming down the front straightaway, Paul.
So Cheever, Boat, Bozell. And then anybody's guess.
Well, this is some fun stuff. How about Cheever coming from as far back as he's come to lead this race? Pit stops or no pit stops, he's done most of it on the racetrack.
How much of a difference as we watch Tony Stewart here as he comes up on Tice Carlson. He's that bright yellow car on the inside to the right of your screen, just went over the oil dry and picked up a little puff of smoke. Stefan Gregoire right there too, looking for racing room, trying to get around Tice Carlson.
Well, another good story, Gregoire started way back and he's up to 4th spot with some trouble in the pit earlier.
Back to Cheever. Tom, the fact that he has not stopped, besides giving him track position, what about the weight of the car compared to somebody who just did?
Well, the weight's lighter. In fact, we heard on the radio, Billy Boat, we got trouble coming off of 2. Big trouble inside down.
Coming off of 2. Oh, my goodness, Ari Lyondike. Lyondike flips the car upside down.
You can see him moving around, though. That car was sliding upside down, but his head wasn't on the surface. Look at him, still working on the wheel.
He's talking on the radio. He picks the steering wheel up so he can talk on the radio. I wonder if there's an antenna hooked up to that. Be very careful, Ari, when you pull the seat belts loose, please.
Well, that's always a good sign, obviously.
Steele, the other one in that incident.
Car 22 in turn 3.
Well, they've got him right side up now, so they got a better chance to get him out of the car now.
Looks like he's okay.
Yeah, it really does. That's great.
So Dave Steele, the 22 car, was the other car that you saw sitting down in turn 3.
It was fun to see him hop out. Obviously, there's not much trouble with Larry right now.
Look at his helmet. Look at his helmet. You know, that puts me in mind of Johnny Rutherford here, 1980. Got upside down on the front stretch, and all he could say was, I was just wondering how thick the helmet was because I could feel it scraping.
Well, one thing about race drivers, one of their harder spots in their bodies is their heads. Here we see it. Steele looks like just jumped sideways. Lyondike had no place to go again. But again, these cars are just jumping sideways coming off of turn 2. Look at the right side tires. Still have a lot of momentum. You can see Ari moving around. He throws the wheel out.
That helmet is amazing.
Good news is
production.
There was no burnt spots on the balaclava, so that's always a good sign.
Well, Herm Johnson paints the helmets for Ari, and a major paint job coming up. We'll be back. We're under yellow in the Dura Lube 200, the Indy Racing League at Phoenix International Raceway. Here's why.
Oh, here we go. That car right there, David Steele, on the far right-hand side of your screen, is the car that starts this problem. The car's going to jump sideways. You see it jumping sideways. No, they have no place to go. They try to go on the outside. One car spins in front of Lyondike, and then Lyondike is up over a wheel and on top at this point.
It was Sam Schmidt, the 99 car, that yellow and red car that was down in and spinning as well. And it scraped right on his helmet. Now, they're still working on that. By the way, Roberto Guerrero pulled off after the restart, and we'll check on that as well. Jack Arute?
Well, Paul, Roberto Guerrero drove by us on a dead toe. He was still in the cockpit of the car, so we'll check on that. But J.J. Yaley, who finished first at Manzanita last night, not going to do that today, along with Davey Hamilton. First, Davey, what happened?
Yeah, we just running hard. Actually, I broke 5th gear right off on that restart, and I fell back 3 or 4 spots, and I still had 6, so he put in 6 and was coming back through there, and J.J. just got away from him, and nowhere to go. Just got pinned between the wall and him, and that's racing, but we'll be back.
J.J., did it sneak up on you, or just how did it transpire?
Well, there at the beginning of the race, we had a pretty bad push, and, they told me just ride it out, not to, do any foolish moves. And, I caught up to the guys in front of me there, and they kind of crossed over a little bit, and I don't know if that got the car loose or not. But, it's very unfortunate for Quaker State in one call, and, John Menard and Jeff Sinnott giving me the chance. And, we'll just put it back together and give it a shot here at Indy.
He signed as a research and development driver for John Menard. This face could be in Tony Stewart's seat next year. Guys?
Yeah. No question about it. You can consider that Tony Stewart is heading off to a ride in NASCAR next year, a full-time ride. That may be his replacement at Menard. We'll be back.
Back to Arizona.
Still under yellow, Billy Boat comes in for fuel just as scheduled. Gary?
Well, they held him off as late as possible. The reason being they think they're well into the window now where they can hopefully make this a 2-stop race. The early leaders won't be able to do so. He's rolling right around 14 seconds.
The stop on lap 67. Now the aerial shots here today provided by the Goodyear Blimp Eagle, based in Carson, California. Recently, Goodyear doubled its blimp fleet to 6, 2 airships being added in Europe, 1 in South America. Don't forget tonight on ABC, the network premiere featuring Alfalfa, Spanky, Darla, and the whole gang, you bet. It's the Little Rascals, followed by the world premiere of Blood on Her Hands.
Little Rascals out on that oval as well so far. You were talking, Peter, about the speed of the circuit, and Phoenix is known to be pretty quick even for an oval, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's a fast circuit. I mean, the main characteristic of Phoenix is that it's quite wide, and you can actually get 2 or 3 abreast. And sometimes you get away with it, sometimes you don't. But it's quite a good circuit for overtaking. And but there are quite a lot of circuits like Phoenix now in dimensions, so it's not unusual in an American racing sense. I think it's worth pointing out that we have got an interesting Goodyear Firestone situation here. We've got a lot of Goodyear runners going well, but then you've got Stewart alone almost on Firestones going incredibly well. So the pattern is very evenly balanced in that sense as well.
Tony Stewart in the yellow car, of course, out in front. Let's go back and join the commentary team in the States live at the Phoenix 200. There's the green flag.
A lap down, and the 3rd place for Earl Boiselle.
Kenny Breck underneath the Buell car there.
Breck in 3rd. Report on Roberto Guerrero, a gearbox problem. He is out of the race. Kenny Breck, the 14 Power Team car, driving for AJ and closing on 2nd place.
You can see a little oil dry down in the corner. That's tough to run through the first time. You're not sure if that track's going to hold you or not.
There's Scott Sharp. He battles with Boiselle.
This is inside Sharp's car again. Coming off of turn 2 here, Paul. All right, they're heading into turn 3 here. You can hear him roll out of the throttle a little bit, but he's able to pick it up about in the apex and drive it on off the corner. Down the front straightaway here. Traffic ahead. Again, rolling out, probably touching the brakes a little bit as he enters turn 1 and 2. And then he's just trying to get after the throttle on the exit of 2 as quick as he can.
His target is Jeff Ward. Just ahead of him.
I think his target is between the fences, Paul, and Ward's in his way.
There's Scott Sharp. That's Jeff Ward as he goes into turn 1 again.
Well, he's catching this group. He's not catching them very fast, and that's going to make it a little more difficult to get by when he does get to them.
Order.
Jeff Ward down on the inside. Didn't quite have enough to make the pass there.
And that is not a move for position with Jeff Ward. He's simply trying to get around some, and I say it in quotes, slower cars.
Well,
in this case, it's Buell.
Yeah, he's
He's
not
had his misfortunes, and
Right.
it's certainly a car that can run up with the front anytime.
exactly not a slower car, but a car that's had trouble early.
And now Sharp takes a move. So Sharp on the run now. Stewart, Gregoire, Breck, then Sharp. Scott's having similar problems with Buell as well.
Well, it's a good battle here. All four of those cars right there together are very similar in speed right now.
That's one of the things I like about racing on ovals. There's a car in the middle of that, not for position, but it's still part of the fight, and it makes for some great racing. John Paul Jr. in the black car sits just ahead of them. He's very quick. This is the fight for second.
Well, Kenny Breck has just caught Gregoire and is trying to put a little pressure on him. But how about Gregoire? This guy started way back. Not a whole lot of money. Big question marks for sponsors on the side of that thing.
The white and orange car, that of course is Breck. The blue car with the question mark, saying, hey guys, we performed great. We're going to the Indy 500. Somebody surely wants to paint their name on there.
I don't know what these guys do, but always in the race, this thing goes towards the front.
Well, I think a lot of that, besides the obvious skill of Gregoire, is Darrell Soppy, who has put many great efforts together as a chief mechanic team manager.
Darrell's been around a long time. Worked with Mario Andretti, worked with the Penske team.
Whoa, it looks like Gregoire's going to get caught up behind traffic. No, he doesn't. He was able to clear it.
Did a nice job there.
And Breck decides the inside line's a place to be.
Breck
car slowing going into turn 3. It looks to be Jeff Ward.
It is Jeff Ward slowing down.
And there is Ward. A sudden slow. I wonder if it's an engine. Remember, there have been engine bearing problems. They got a lot of bad bearings. They don't, a lot meaning not a whole bunch, but a group of bad bearings, and they're not sure what teams ended up with them. Imagine how that makes the engine builders feel.
Well, I know everybody in the DePasco crew is real hot right now.
Tony Stewart, the leader, is only about 2 seconds out in front of Gregoire. Here he comes through the field. As with Ken Breck right behind him, they work around Mark Dismore, back in the car after being off the course. That's the distance all the way up to the leader. There goes Stewart. Here comes the fight for second place. That blue car is second. And the white and orange car behind him is third place, Kenny Breck. Scott Sharp, whoa, way up there.
Tice Carlson had him going on both sides of him. That's not fun for a lap traffic.
And that gives it over to Kenny Breck to move into second place. Traffic is the key. Now we'd like to pause for 5 seconds to allow our ABC stations to identify themselves. At Phoenix International, the leader is Tony Stewart. The battle is at second place. Kenny Breck and Stefan Gregoire have been battling for second. Scott Sharp is sitting in fourth place, and Scott Goodyear is currently in fifth. That's Scott Sharp. He's back some distance. He has ground to make up.
Well, it doesn't take long to make up ground at Phoenix International, especially if he can get some of the leaders in front of him in some traffic situations.
84 laps, now 85 miles complete on the Mile in the Desert. Oh, look at Cheever with Billy Boat right there as well as they battle their way through. They're trying to catch up with Scott Goodyear. Well, almost put Cheever into the wall.
There's great battles all around this racetrack right now, Paul. We just can't keep up with them all.
You know, I think that battle for seventh is probably the best one on the circuit right now, and Cheever's right in the middle of it. There he goes. Here comes Boat. There comes Goodyear. That's Buzz Calkins right behind Goodyear in the red car number 12.
This is inside Goodyear's car right there.
On board Goodyear.
You can hear that engine noise from the in-car Camry. He wants to get back after that throttle on the exit of 2, but it just won't accept it, so he's got to feather it a little bit.
So Billy Boat. And there's Stewart. There's Boat. Currently leading that battle for 6th place. Look at this on the moving up. Boat 11th to 6th. Dismore, after having trouble, 22nd up to 18th. Tony Stewart, while everybody else is battling, has it pretty easy right now. He's 5 seconds ahead of 2nd place, Kenny Breck. We'll return with more of the Dura Lube 200 after this message and a word from our ABC stations.
We've got live action for you from the Phoenix 200 in Arizona, and Lion Dyke at the moment is talking to our American reporters. Let's hear a few words from the man who ended up upside down.
Okay, because it seemed all slow motion to me. I could see the sparks flying off the car, and I could see the tarmac underneath me going by, and the seat belts held me in really good, so everything worked fine. And just before I came to a stop, I was telling them on the radio everything's okay.
Paul, who says these guys aren't athletes?
You know what I think's interesting is Arie Luyendyk collects helmets of all the drivers. And he and I were talking. He's got a little museum in his garage at his house out here in Scottsdale. And I wanted to trade a helmet with him. You may want this guy's too, Tony Stewart. He's now gone around Eddie Cheever, put him a lap down. Cheever was in 6th. Billy Boat in the 11 car, just ahead of him now, is the next car that he's planning on putting a lap down. Remember Stewart, last stop though, on the 48th lap for fuel, and we now are on lap 101, just past the halfway point here at Phoenix. By the way, for next week, next Saturday, racing kart action from halfway around the world when we bring you the Budweiser 500K from Japan. Michael Andretti, will he be able to make it 2 in a row? Boat certainly knows he's there. You saw Jeff Ward slow down, pull off earlier. Gary, what's the story?
According to Mitch Davis, Paul, they believe that they've blown 6th gear, so they've gone down to 5th. They basically have to put it in the cruise mode. They hope to stay out there, but they clearly can't run at pace with the other guys. Very disappointing break for the guy who started on the pole.
And with a spectacular run in the early going. There he is, the 35 car. Tom, 5th to 6th really is only about 1 tooth different here, isn't it?
Well, a lot of times it is, but what surprised me that Jeff didn't catch it any sooner, because he almost slowed to a stop and then realized, hey, maybe I ought to try something else. The thing's back up to speed. He's not that far off the pace. It's just he lost quite a bit of time before he realized he had other selections.
He's not far at all. He currently runs in 10th. Stewart puts Billy Boat a lap down. So now Stewart style comes. Nope, sorry. He's still got him to go. It comes by Ray.
Actually, Billy stepped up the pace.
Yeah, he sure has.
Stewart was closing. We got a yellow spin.
Well, that will save Billy Boat for the moment. The spin is Paul Durant. And that's a brand new team.
Car 23.
Look at that car. You don't quite know what color to call it. Because that car is, for the most part, raw carbon fiber exposed.
Turn 1.
Yeah, that's getting your act together real late in the day, I would say.
Pits are closed.
So race control tells everybody up and down pit road that the pits are closed until the pace car gathers up the field, and as the safety equipment goes out to handle up the situation after Paul Durant got sideways.
Stewart has just taken a pit stop. Let's go back.
Back at Phoenix International, taking advantage of the yellow, Kenny Breck, the 14 car, came in. Also Tony Stewart, they were 1-2, and Stefan Gregoire came in. Now those cars all pitted on the 48th lap. You would also expect Scott Sharp would be in the pits as well very quickly. Billy Boat, on the other hand, was able to move up and catch up to the back of the field just before he was going to go down to the leader of the race, that number 1 car of Tony Stewart. There is Billy Boat. Now, you can get up to speed on all the facts of all auto racing Jackaroot and I both right.
Well, Tony Stewart nipping into the pits, and how do you think it's shaping up now after that?
Well, Boat stopped as well, and it looked as if he's on new tyres. So I would suspect Stewart's in a reasonably strong position right now. But anything could happen, you know, it's just a race of yellows, isn't it, basically? And as I say, it's going to be luck of the draw who actually takes a gamble against coming in late in the race and then perhaps gets an advantage with a yellow.
Firestone, Goodyear, what's the significance of the tyres out there, Chris?
Well, the Goodyear guys seem to outnumber the Firestone ones, but Firestone are on the strongest car out there so far. As we said, though, it's a bit of a lottery. Goodyear have covered their odds slightly by having more tyres on more cars, but I'd put money at the moment on Firestone coming ahead first.
Not quite sure what tyres the tractor was on, but Stewart certainly in the lead. Let's go back to Arizona.
Now, the reason for the yellow, we suggested maybe Paul Durant might have spun. No, not so at all. What he did was lose an engine. Now, when one of those goes, that's oil and water coming out of the car.
Well, that was a lot of debris coming out of the back of that car. You can see on the screen here on the in-car camera the moisture, a lot of water, but there was also oil in there to make that kind of smoke.
And of course, not so much what comes up on the visor, but what gets underneath your wheels when that happens. Because when it lets go, it usually takes the car that has the engine going and anybody who's pursuing closely behind. So Stewart, he will be the leader as we come back to the green flag. Kenny Breck is in second, followed by Gregoire, Sharp, Boat, Cheever, Calkins. Boat still on the lead lap, top five still on the lead. 113 laps will be complete as we come to the green.
What's interesting is three of the guys on the lead lap are actually going to lead this group down to the green flag. They're at the tail end of the lead lap. Stewart's caught back 7 or 8 spots, so it'll be interesting to see if they can hold him off and maintain that lap and maybe get another yellow to help him later in this race.
And there are 6 slower cars in front of Tony Stewart that he will have to immediately handle up.
Well, we're not sure they're slower yet, Paul. There's some quick guys up there. They've just struggled.
Good point. One of them being Cheever up there. Green, here we go.
Sam Schmidt, that yellow car down on the inside, made a good restart. He's trying to keep from going a lap down.
3 cars behind Stewart. Kenny Breck will try to get into the fight. Watch for him in the 14 car. He's closing in quickly past the first of those cars.
Well, there's Goodyear. He's stuck in traffic. Listen to him. He had to get out of the throttle looking for a way around.
I'll tell you who else is flying in this. Look at Robbie Buell. Look at that blue car, the front of the 2 Buell cars, as he's worked in front of the 2 blue cars as he's widened in and out, got in front of Stefan Gregoire. Remember, he's still a lap down, but boy, he's driving like crazy.
Well, this is out the back of Goodyear's car. Kenny Breck is just all over him. Scott's being slowed up a little bit. Buell on the outside, a lap down or so, but the car is working real well.
Yeah, Buell's actually 16th, not down a lap or so, down 13. Whoa! What's going with Gregoire there?
Well, Breck just got underneath Goodyear right there. A good move. Kenny Breck is going towards the front.
Well, he's currently running in second place. Gregoire keeps running this high line. How does he do that?
I think he's got to have his eyes shut because he's stirring up a lot of stuff up there. He's dusting off that high groove.
Just hey guys, ahead remember we were talking about Kenny Breck having a push condition. Well, during that last pit stop, Dami LeMans and the AJ Foyt team said, we're not going to make any changes. Guess what? The push is gone.
Don't you love AJ? So instinctive. Breck alone now. He's handled up Buell, but Buell sure put on a show. Now they say that they're concerned about debris. And they've gone yellow.
Pits are closed. Pits are closed. Car 1, turn 4.
What was interesting that Breck...
Hold up, Ray. Don't go yet. No. Car 12, your last car. Car 1, turn 1. You got him, pace car. Pace car, take him low on the front straightaway. Pace car, low on the front straightaway.
Mel Harder, the voice of race control. Cheever and Calkins both made up their lap as we show you the fastest laps thus far of the day. No surprise on Stewart. Look at Boat. And Kenny Breck is closing on Tony Stewart. Then there's a 4-car separation of slower cars. Back to third place, Stefan Gregoire. Billy Boat is fourth. Scott Sharp is fifth. There's that battle, first, second place, as they flash across the line.
It was real interesting. Last pit stop, we talked about AJ's team not making the adjustment to Breck, but we did see the fact that Tony Stewart did do adjustments to the front wing. They added a lot of front wing.
This is a fight for third. Billy Boat moving on Stefan Gregoire.
And Tom
And gets him. Go ahead.
To follow up on that, Larry Curry said we need more wing. We're trying to put it in on that last stop. They think that the car is good, but we see worry lines on the concern of the faces down here. They see how quickly Breck is closing up. We got a great battle shaping up now as they'll soon be hitting traffic.
And again, Stefan Gregoire goes way high, but keeps the car under control. Boat now to third. Breck still working on Stewart, though Stewart recognized it and pulled out about 2/10 on him. Now Boat with Robbie Buell in front of him. Again, Buell not a player. He's 13 laps behind, but keeping out there and keeping plenty fast.
AJ thinks he's a player right now. He wants Billy to get by clean and go towards the front. Boat's running good, but so is Buell.
And Buell is the kind of guy, though, that recognizing that the lead battle might be right behind him, will eventually decide to let him through. He's been opening the inside to him for the past couple of turns.
Well, they're all racers, Paul, and if they've got a chance to run hard, they're going to do that.
Back at the front of the field, look at this. Breck is now close to within 100 yards of Stewart. Stewart's having to handle the traffic. Breck, that white and orange, number 14. There's Stewart, number 1. The reigning champion, the Glidden car. And Breck around traffic, back in contact with the leader. Second place, right on top of one another. Crossed the line last time at 9/10 separating them. He's been as close as 2/10, actually fallen back a bit.
Yeah, a lot of that's traffic, Paul. Who gets through the cleanest? We talked about it earlier. If you catch him on the straightaway, it's not going to slow you up, but a lot of times you're going to catch him in the corner and you got to roll out of that throttle.
And I know from time to time we'll put that at the line computation in, and sometimes on a mile oval,
we got trouble.
Yellow again.
On turn 2 again. It's John Paul. Oh.
Your leader is in turn 3. Car 10.
So John Paul
Pits are closed.
catches the wall off of 2. Every incident today, save one, has been off at 2.
Well,
John Paul's okay. A lot of damage to the car.
Yeah, and that second contact is a lot of times the problem.
Car 1 is at the start-finish line. Car 10 will be your last car, pace car. All right, pace car.
There's Stewart, the leader.
Well, we saw in John Paul's situation, he clipped the outside of turn 2. There's Buzz. He looks like he's got some debris damage there that's going to affect the handling of that car. But what I was trying to get to, John Paul made that second contact after the right side wheels were gone. And that's when a driver is really exposed because there's nothing there to absorb the energy. Again,
What?
Buzz, the front wing.
Just peeled the upper element of that wing right up.
Well, there's John Paul. The thing just jumps sideways hard and backs into the wall terribly. Now, I don't know. I don't think he's trying to get out of the way. There's nothing left on the right side. But now watch this contact. Now, that's what can be tough because there's nothing left there to absorb energy.
John Paul Jr., he's fine, goes to the ambulance. That's mandatory. And there's the question mark, the Bradley car, Buzz Calkins, with that element gone. And Billy Boat comes into the pits, and he comes in third place, but still very definitely a factor in this race. Scott Sharp comes in. He's the 5th place car.
Well, these yellows give these guys opportunity to make further adjustments to these cars to try to close the gap from the leader.
the damage to Buzz Calkins' car. They can change that nose pretty quickly, and they are under yellow. Boat rolls. The crew's wisely taking their time during the yellow. Sharp rolls out. And the Buzz Calkins crew goes to work on the nose of his car. It's going to be a modular change. We'll return with more after this message and a word from our ABC stations.
Yeah, lots of stories around the Paul family, Paul Jr. and Paul Sr. But actually, John Paul Jr. is quite a quick driver. He's a very quick oval driver, and sad to see him out of the race. But he's had a very eventful day because he had a problem earlier on too. So perhaps he should have called it a day earlier on.
He's had a few run-ins with the law, and so was his father, and here a run-in with the wall. And that's turn 2 again, Chris.
Yeah, all but one accident has taken place on turn 2. It's proving fairly treacherous there. Maybe it's just the direction of the wind. You know, a slight change in the wind direction can be enough to catch these guys out. They're that much on the limit, and the cars are that dependent on their aerodynamic downforce. Obviously, yeah, for some reason there's a lot of problem with that particular corner, but it just shows you really how much of a lottery this race could turn out to be. John Paul went into the wall fairly hard, and the car behind him had the closest of shaves. Buzz Calkins damaged his front wing, but there was nothing to stop him having exactly the same trouble as Arie Luyendyk. He was just, you know, 1 foot further away and got away with it.
Stuart leading, what is the psychology now of being in front? I mean, he's coming down to the crunch zone, isn't he?
Well, yeah, he is. With a race like this, you're all the time going to be thinking about trying to stay out of trouble, and in the traffic here, you know, he is very experienced and he's doing a brilliant job at cutting through the back markers without any trouble. All he needs now is for another turn 2 incident to happen right in front of him, and you know, there'll be nothing he could do about that. But he does seem to be pushing very hard. The car's working for him, and Kenny Brack is managing to stay with him, but they do seem to have the legs on the rest of the field, and they're pulling away. So when he gets the chance, he's just trying to distance himself from the rest of the field. So he's looking pretty strong.
He has plenty of experience of leading and winning, of course, which must help at this stage.
That's right. He's won a lot of races on this circuit as well in sprint cars. A great oval driver, as I've said before. I really would love to see Tony Stewart in a turning left and turning right at the same time, you know, actually on a road course. I think it'd be very impressive. I think I've got a lot of time for him.
Chris talked about this being the Indy preparation race, and it's the last chance saloon, I suppose, for these teams.
Well, it is, yeah. I mean, I don't think this circuit particularly is technically relevant to Indianapolis, but if the car is good and the team's working well and you've got a good result, obviously it helps on the build-up to Indy.
European interest that we had at the start of the show, and it's obviously continuing, so let's see if we can have a European winner in Arizona at the Phoenix 200.
Very expensive little parking lot down there. Some of the cars that have been involved in crashes today. We're still under yellow. At least the onboard camera still works on one of them. Tomorrow night, Oscar night on ABC with an all-new Barbara Walters special.
Too much about Barbara Walters. We'll worry about what's happening in this race. And I was just mentioning there the European interest, certainly at the head of the field, and we could possibly have a European winner, Chris.
Yeah, as I said earlier, Kenny Brack seems to be the only car capable of staying with the most frequent leader, Tony Stewart. So, you know, he could be well placed for the final section of the race to give it that little bit extra push.
Your tip, Peter?
I think Kenny can do it. I'd really love to see him win. I think he's a great driver. He should have won the European 3000 Championship. He's been working very hard in America. He's with Foyt now, second race with Foyt, and AJ's a very, very good manager of races, particularly on ovals.
Well, Paul Page commentating over in America now, and there again is the green flag. We're away once more.
Battles at the front of the field, 140 laps complete. There's 60 miles to go now. Billy Boat was in, topped off. He sits in third.
We actually third in line right now is Jeff Ward. He's running real good. He might be able to get a lap back and be a contender yet, Paul.
Tell you what, despite his gearbox problems, Jeff Ward has been moving steadily forward. He's now in 6th place. 1 lap behind the leaders. Scott Sharp on the move as we continue to watch the battle for this lead. He just got around Billy Boat, and so Scott Sharp is now third. Gary Gerald?
Oh, that's very interesting about the situation for race leader Tony Stewart. They elected to stay out during the last yellow. They were trying to decide, should we come in and top off? Should we gamble that we'll get another opportunity? They've elected to gamble, but it seems clear they will have to stop for a final load of fuel. That could be a great advantage for Billy Boat, and it could help Jeff Ward get himself unlapped. Jack?
Well, Gary, it will not be a big help for Kenny Breck, however, because talking to Tommy LeMay and the power team pits, he says, I think we're going to have to come in and give Breck a splash and go of about 4 gallons near the end of the race. The other thing that Breck has noticed is that when he chases Tony Stewart down, Stewart is on the rev limiter. Now, for Kenny Breck and this team, that's kind of like using the whip to a thoroughbred. That's really heightened their emotions, and they've told Kenny Breck, go ahead, chase him down, because we're going to have to pit anyways, guys.
Stewart leads, Breck 7/10 back. There's that interval. There's Stewart. Kenny Breck right in pursuit. Kenny Breck from Sweden, nice young man. Stefan Gregoire has been running in 5th place, and Roberto Guerrero doesn't hold a candle to Gregoire's line on this track.
Well, he's dusted off some unexplored territory out there. It's been fun to watch him come through traffic. It's pretty exciting to watch this kid. This foreigner, I don't think he knows where the groove is here, but he's getting around the racetrack in a hurry.
He climbs high, low. More often than not, he's high, right up close to the wall and throwing up dust. Well, that's Sam Smith just in front of him.
Well, actually, Sam's doing a good job out there, but Gregoire's been able to go high, low. Now here's the pass underneath. Doing a good job trying to come to the front.
Great representation of one of the small teams as we go back to the front. And again, what the IRL has been looking for is to boost up these smaller teams and get them competitive. That's exactly what's happening. Nice level playing field. Stewart now dealing with traffic again.
Well, no problem there. Tice gave him some room to get underneath. But here's Jimmy Kite that had trouble earlier.
And he knows he's there. He ain't going to fight with him. Looking back now for Kenny Breck. There he comes. 1.2 back. And Breck, there he is. Now has to handle up Jimmy Kite to get back in touch with the leader.
Well, and really, you don't realize how hard Breck's working. Probably harder than the leader. The leader's just cruising, but Breck's trying to close the gap. So he's on the rev limiter, on the very edge of control in each corner.
So Stewart still the leader. 4 times the winner of this race has gone on to win the Indy 500. Voigt, Bobby Unser, and Al Unser twice. What will happen this year?
Thanks, gentlemen. Let's go back for the climax in Phoenix right now.
Field just took the green, 173 laps. Scott Sharp took the lead when Tony Stewart came in for a splash of fuel. So did Kenny Breck. They're going to have to fight through traffic. On board was Sharp, the leader of the race. Look at Stewart there, set up behind the white car of Boesel. And Kenny Breck right on top of him.
Breck's all over him. Again, dealing with traffic, that's what makes PIR so much fun.
Breck hesitated for just a minute. There's a white and orange car, the 14-car power team car. That is Kenny Breck. He's the one to watch for because he's the one that's got to catch Stewart.
You see the blue car, Buell on the outside, a couple laps down, but making a heck of a run.
I'll tell you what, if Buell hadn't gone those laps down early on, he'd still be a key factor in this race.
There's a lot of fast cars out there right now, Paul.
Billy Boat's in the middle of that gaggle back there, too, in the 11 car. Jack Harut?
Well, let's check with Mike Horvath, who's the engineer. Can he go the distance? We think he can. How tight's it going to be? Can't hear you. How tight? How tight are you? Oh, plenty of room. Oh, yeah. And they all got their fingers crossed down here, guys.
Yeah, I heard the hesitation. We think he can. Oh, you got a mic, Jack. Plenty of room. Scott Sharp. The leader of the race. Here's Tony Stewart, second place. And right behind him is Kenny Breck, third place. Stewart is 3.5 seconds back from the lead. At Phoenix International, 177 laps complete. The leader is Scott Sharp. He picked the lead up when Tony Stewart and Kenny Breck ran for the pits to get a splash of fuel. Sharp's team thinks that he can make it to the finish, but they don't sound real confident. At the same time, Stewart and Breck are trying to close and are in their own battle, just simply trying to get there.
Well, there's Stewart trying to get through traffic. Radio conversation says he's having trouble getting through traffic.
Now we can take a look. There's Stewart. Now Breck's got some work now. Just tell you what to expect at the Indianapolis 500. As we come up, they'll cross the line, 20 laps to go. Stewart still in pursuit of Scott Sharp. There's the leader. There's second place, Tony Stewart. So Stewart has some traffic. Three cars between Sharp and Stewart. There's Breck. Then you see Billy Boat. Get a glimpse of him, the 11 comes in the car from time to time. There it is. So now we move in the closing laps of the race with Scott Sharp looking very strong, but being pursued.
Well, 19 laps to go, Peter. Sharp in the lead, and Sharp is a man you know quite well.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He won the championship. He shared the championship with Buzz Corkins in year one. Had a few bad accidents last year, knocked himself on the head a bit, none of which were his fault except for one. And he didn't do the last 3 or 4 races. The doctors said that he ought to just take a rest. But his father, they've got a long history of motorsport in that family. His father's done very well in Trans Am over the years. And Scott is a very talented, very quick guy.
We've been away from the live pictures for long enough. Let's watch the racing while we talk. And what, 17 laps to go, and Sharp, but does he have enough fuel? That's the big question, isn't it?
Well, yeah, he has, if you believe what his pit are saying, and I think he must do. They must be fairly confident, otherwise they would have called him in under the last yellow. But you never know.
But on F1, we've seen guys running out of fuel in the last lap before, haven't we?
That's right, and if they were taking a gamble that there will be another yellow, of course they would say to the commentary team who are asking them, yeah, we're fine.
We've heard a lot of techno babble out there, losing air and dirty air. What's the layman speak of all that?
Well, the result is a big crash. But no, I mean, that's a very relevant point, particularly on these small ovals. They're high-speed circuits, so you rely on clean air over your wings to push the car down to the ground and give you the grip. You're in so much traffic all the time that the air, there's a lot of turbulence, and you don't get consistent amounts of downforce. Ooh, and a big crash there.
I say.
A lot of turbulence on his wing.
Peter, that was frightening.
Yeah, We need to see what happened. As I say, these cars are very, very strong, and we've seen drivers walk away from some very severe accidents today.
Chris, what protects them in those situations, in the makeup of the car itself?
As you can see there, the wheels and suspension come off the cars very quickly indeed. They're just, they're designed to rip off as soon as you make contact with anything solid. But it's what the driver's sitting in that is really built very strongly. Unfortunately, there's Kenny Brack out of the race. Looks like he got caught up in that accident. But you can see the drivers moving around. They're very well protected. The cars and the regulations every year change to make it safer and safer for the car, for the drivers. But looking at this accident, a hell of a lot of traffic going through that corner, and probably coming up to the accident just now.
What do you feel went wrong, Peter?
Well, we're just about to see it. Looks like he just tagged Mike Groff as he was going inside him there. There's three abreast. You have Billy Boat right behind him. This is Kenny Brack. And it looks like he tagged Mike Groff and put him into the wall. It's a question of too many cars and not enough space there.
Okay, well, let's go back to Arizona, Phoenix, and our American commentary team as we watch that huge smash again, led, of course, by senior commentator Paul Page.
Fortunately, he scrubbed off quite a bit of speed at that time.
Another look, same situation. It's brought out our yellow at 186 laps.
Well, you can see him 2-3 wide on the exit of turn 2 right here. That's Billy Boat down on the right side of your screen looking underneath. Breck's in a sandwich right here. The sandwich is thinner. The bread's thinner than it needed to be. They touch tires. It turns him to the right.
Mike Groff came down. I assumed thinking that Breck could move to his left, but he couldn't. Stefan Gregoire was there, and Billy Boat was closing in too.
Well, that was hard impact into the outside wall, Paul. I thought Breck was actually going to get it worse than Mike Groff, but it looked like Groff actually hit harder than Breck.
They're still working at Mike Groff's car. Remember, he suffered some pretty severe injuries a year ago and is really just coming back to full health from that. So the IRL safety team working on that car. What's that going to do when we go green? One, it's going to make it a sprint to the finish, but it's also going to do some great tactical stuff. Stay tuned for World News Tonight, Sunday. It's coming up next, except on the West Coast. So we're under yellow at PIR.
Do you feel, Peter, that this in fact helps Sharp?
Yeah, this will be quite a long yellow. They'll be cruising around now, and there'll be a lot of cars. Still, there are cars between Stewart and Sharp, and there'll be probably just a couple of laps up to the checkered flag now. So, looking good for Scott Sharp.
Chris?
Yes, got to agree with that. Scott Sharp's looking fairly comfortable on fuel, looking fairly comfortable for a win, perhaps.
Okay, let's go back now to Arizona. Not too many laps to go, but we'll be staying right to the end of this, of course, here on Sky Sports Live. The Football League review will follow this programme. How could we possibly miss the end of such a fascinating race? It's been incredible stuff.
Scott Sharp is the leader. Now, under the yellow, his teammate Mark Dismore is lined up behind him. Not a contest in the fight, but he could be a factor in the race. Well, then there's Tony Stewart, who is second place, and then Stefan Gregoire, who is a lap down in fourth, but obviously can run fast with the leaders. Then the true third place car, Billy Boat.
Well, the real key to this is we've got Sharp's teammate between him and Stewart for this victory. And, if I was a betting man, I'd bet that Mark is probably not going to pull over and let this guy go by unmolested.
Gary?
Larry Curry sits here. You're waiting patiently for the opportunity to go for the win, but you've got team cars in front of you. How big of an obstacle is Dismore in the 28?
Well, Tony radioed me and said, send somebody down to the 28 car and ask him not to hold us up. And I said, Tony, that's Scott Sharp's teammate. I don't think we get much influence. But Mark Dismore's a clean racer, and We'll let those two guys go finish it, I'm sure.
Now, the pace that you've seen with 10 laps to go, established by Sharp, have you got enough muscle if you get by Dismore to make a challenge for the lead?
Oh, I certainly think we can make a challenge for the lead. The good news is there's not a bunch of traffic, so we get by Mark Dismore, it'll be interesting here on the finish.
Thanks.
The bad news is going to be the length of the cleanup, because with the cleanup going long, as they cross into that final 10-lap barrier right now, it looks like it's several more laps for the cleanup, and they may be down to a 2, 3, 4-lap sprint. The view high above, the Goodyear Blimp Eagle, been providing aerial pictures today. 1998 marks the 100th anniversary of Goodyear and the 73rd anniversary of the Blimp fleet.
Well, Paul, again, we're going to have a good finish here.
Don't forget.
Well, Peter, see Stewart there still weaving about out there, and even though there's only 10 laps to go, but can this race finish on a yellow?
Oh yes, it can finish on a yellow. One hopes that it won't, and I suspect it'll sort of finish with 2 or 3 laps to go. That's the way things normally happen in America, magically. But it's interesting, he's got Mark Dismore in front of him, as they say, a teammate of Sharp's, and Dismore's actually driven for the Menard team, so there's a bit of sort of blood there, and it'll be very interesting to see what goes on. Dismore's not slow either, he's a quick driver, so let's wait and see.
It's actually amazing, Chris, that he's still there, because he had that spin at the beginning of the race. But let's go back to Arizona now, in Phoenix, as we watch the cleanup operation.
Or your local news. On the West Coast, it's the Liberty Mutual Legends of Golf.
They got Mike Groff out of the car here. They're trying to get his gloves off. They're trying to stabilize that neck area. He is moving around, though, so that's a good sign. He's trying to get his other glove off. They got the left-hand glove off. He was trying to get his own right-hand glove. Those are all good signs. Again, he was injured last year.
And of course, the real question is Kenny Breck. Under the yellow, they're counting the laps down. Not the real question. We know he's out of the car and he's fine, but we hope to hear from him to see what insight he may give us to how this thing's going to run to the finish. 192 laps, 8 to go. You can see they are still cleaning up. It's going to be very, very close. The pressure is very definitely on those safety crews now that the drivers are out to try and get the equipment off of the race course.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like they got the debris off the course. It's just a matter of getting Mike's car and Mike into a safe situation. I'm sure the Menard team would probably actually be looking for a red flag right here until they get that problem cleaned up, but it doesn't look like they're going to get that situation.
All right, now let's look at the lineup, because that's critical. There's Scott Sharp, then Mark Dismore. Dismore's not a factor. Then you saw Tony Stewart. Then Billy Boat is third, but these other cars in here are going to make a world of difference. And the race control is saying that they believe that they are going to get going before they run out of distance at 200 laps, but it's going to be close.
Well, Dismore is a factor right now. It'll be interesting to see how that's played out. You know, there's some of us have been in that situation before, but this is a teammate situation now, and Dismore's down quite a few laps. It'll be real interesting to see what happens here for this first restart.
Well, what would you do if you were Dismore?
As a racer, you got to race, and if the car's good, you drive her down in there and see if the guy behind you is faster.
Do you make it wide?
No, you wouldn't want to make it wide. That would be unfair to the competition behind you.
And he smiles while he says it. So we have the makings. If they can get those cars off the course and the equipment in, we have the makings of a great finish here at Phoenix International. A race that many drivers, and Tom, why do they say it, sets you for Indy. It tells you a great deal about your car for Indy.
Well, we're not sure why that is, Paul, but if the car works here, you usually carry that on to Indianapolis. Now, aerodynamics are a lot different at Indy, but the mechanical side of the suspension, the springs, sway bars, shocks, a lot of those things really carry over from this racetrack to Indianapolis, and that coupled with the psychological advantage and the team morale that you can bring to the month of May by having a good race here in Phoenix.
Well, you can imagine the tension that they're feeling. both up in Connecticut, where Scott Sharp was born and reared, and out in California, where he lives now. They know that they have the possibility of seeing a victory for this very likable young man.
Well, this is a young team. The Kelly team has done a tremendous job in a short amount of time. So it's a relatively new team, but Scott Sharp, been around a long time, had a tough year last year, some injuries. I'm sure there's some people thinking that he might be overdue. In fact, I heard that he's 10 months pregnant.
Now 5 laps to go. They now say that they're going to go green next time by. Mike Groff, the medical report is that he's awake, but he's a little groggy, and he's more responsive than he was initially. And so just to take the precaution, they're going to fly him out, aerovac him out to local hospital.
I still don't know how they can tell when a race driver is groggy.
So Sharp, then his teammate. You're looking back at his teammate there. The question will be, what can and will Tony Stewart do? You've got to bet that Tony Stewart, who is one aggressive race driver, is going to jump all over Dismore.
And Paul, one of the things you may wonder about is what about Scott Sharp in the fuel department? Well, they've gone now to full rich. They know Stewart is going to try and close, and they said, don't worry about it. We got plenty of fuel. Just go for it wide open.
What, did you see Billy Boat, too? Oh, now we're listening to Sharp's radio. And
come on, 28.
Actually, race control trying to get the field to bunch up nice and
All
tight.
right, guys, let's pack them up. Let's look good. Come on, 28.
Listen to that. They're trying to help the 28 pack up. Don't leave a gap.
28, let's go. Move it up, 28.
They're trying to do is talk the team into pushing Mark Dismore forward. And of course, what Dismore is doing is lagging a little bit.
Well, it's a real slow start right now. I can't believe how slow they're going, Paul. This could cause some excitement right here. I mean, they're almost stopped out there. I've never seen them go this slow. The pace car keeps slowing down to try to get Dismore to close the gap up.
Green flag, control. Green flag.
Green, watch Stewart.
Car 28,
3 to go.
let the one car by. Car 28, let the one car by.
Who really got caught out there was Billy Boat. That slow restart hurt Billy quite a bit.
Now Sharp can taste it. Can Stewart catch him? Billy Boat is also sensing he might be able to catch Stewart.
Next time by.
There's Billy Boat and Greg Waugh running down into turn 3 side by side.
Turn 4. All right, white flag.
1 mile to go for Scott Sharp. 1 mile to go for Tony Stewart. And Billy Boat is in this fight too.
All right, turn 3. All right, turn
Scott
4.
Sharp is going to get it done. As he comes off of turn 4, he knows he has it. Stewart can't run him down, and Boat can't run down. Jackaroo.
On your radio, congratulations. What a terrific victory.
So the win goes to Scott Sharp, his second in the IRL. Tony Stewart can't run him down. Mark Dismore does his job. Stay tuned for world news tonight, Sunday, coming up next on the East Coast, or your local news on the East Coast. And then on the West Coast, don't forget the Liberty Mutual Legends of Golf coming up next. Unofficial result.